Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning, this Matt.
This is Jesse.
And we're going to go through the old podcast notes real quick. If you ever feel like reaching out to us, find us on It Tastes Like Burning Cast at gmail.com. You can find us on Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning Cast. And you can find us on Twitter at
TOB Cast.
ITOB Cast. We did have someone reach out to us earlier this week for a discussion point, and we're going to actually probably have a pretty more thorough and in-depth uh, discussion on ISO sometime after the 1st of June when we do our ISO rating and review. We'll talk a lot more in detail about that. Before we dive off into today's topic, Jesse, do you have just anything rolling and rambling around that you want to throw out there?
No, it's an empty hallway.
I can understand that.
The space between my ears.
We're getting to that time of the year where it's pretty busy. A lot of things are going on. Oddly enough, somehow or another, the gates of hell have been held closed so far in Texas with crushing walls of water. So we at least have pterodactyl-sized mosquitoes on our near and very, very timely future. So we're all anticipating that with great eagerness.
Yeah. But at least it's not on fire. So
So
there is that.
what we're going to kind of take a stab at today is I've started working for a new company and I've had the opportunity to visit with a lot of different departments: career, combination, and volunteer. And I'm going to make an overgeneralized statement, but from my personal interactions with a lot of departments, there's about 1 or 2%, particularly on the volunteer side, that have it figured out. And then there's everyone else is still working a lot to even trying to figure out where to start, much less how to start. I'm surprised at how many combination departments that I actually see fighting the good fight, and they've got a lot of internal problems. And then the departments that are segueing from combination to career, I'm actually surprised at how much turmoil's the wrong word, but in my very ignorant opinion, I see people making it a lot harder from my perspective than it has to be. And the one common goal in any organization that I've encountered that I would call well run, has it figured out, has a direction, there's something happening there, is strong leadership with everyone knows what they're doing. Okay, they may not agree, but everyone knows. And then there's everyone else. And that's something that which would make sense in this whole thing that I'm talking about. It would make sense that probably volunteer would have a little harder time with that. Same with combination. But I even stumble into the occasional career department that's, again, struggling's not the right word for them, but they have a lot of uphill battles that I don't think should exist. Not knowing the situation, I mean, again, it's kind of a bold, ignorant statement that I'm making there.
Well, and I've made some of these same travels that you're making for under different context, and you know, I see a couple of different paths that some of these departments go down, and there's the career department that's in a place that's too small to support it. And that's a struggle, right? You
Yeah.
see that happens a lot. So there's just not a population or a tax base big enough to support the full career department. And then you've got the combination department that can't. There's so much infighting and internal power struggles and whatever other issues are at bay there, and that make it bad. And then there's the volunteer department that's sitting there saying it's inevitable that we're going career.
Right. And there's it's rare, There's some departments that have embraced the concept of volunteer. So there's a little itty bitty, very rural department that I stumbled into this week. Uh, and sitting there talking to the chief, he got a Texas Forest Service grant, and we were talking to him. I was, and I'm gonna sit there and figure out who the client is, what they got going on, what their call volume is, you know, what's their what's their typical call, what's the call that eats them, uh, funding, on and on and on. Okay, I like to fill out the organization, and little itty bitty department, probably 7,500 calls a year, no engine. They have a big old tanker, couple brush rigs, run some medicals. Their main call volume is traffic accidents, big traffic accidents. I'll add that, big accidents, and uh, wildland. Okay, and their chief. I didn't ask him how long he was chief, but just the way he was talking and the things that he's been working on for a while aren't 2-year chief projects, and the different county associations and just the whole project in a manner. And this guy has put all the time, energy, and effort in, probably over decades, to get his little department to continue and thrive and grow. And through all of his work, I won't say it was for naught, but for his organization and arguably for the county, one thing changed, Jesse. What was the one thing that changed for him that had monumental impact? And
Money,
and I'll even help you. You're right, it is money. And it didn't come from his department. What was the funding source?
county, city, ESD,
Not an ESD. In this case, city's not an option.
county ponied up some money.
County finally gave him money. How did that happen? New judge.
Yeah,
They had a new judge come in. Judge actually took his job seriously, started to survey some of the departments. Here's a novel concept. Guess where the chief started to see the judge at? On the calls. He was showing up to these wildland calls, and he was watching the departments. And he's like, oh God, Jesus, we
they
can help you.
they need stuff, right?
And he was just tickled pink that they were finally getting a subsidy. And, and I kind of did. I told him, I'm like, well, he maybe felt like you beat your head into the wall for 25 years, but you're the one that literally laid the groundwork for it by putting the time, energy, and effort into trying to actually have the discussion with people. Um, and it did, made a huge impact for him. And wasn't that long ago with departments around us, and they were running almost 1,000 calls a year with a budget of 18,000. I don't know how much more shoestring you can get than that,
Yeah, that's getting the gas in the truck, and that's about it.
if that. Probably going into debt
Yeah,
to try and figure out how to actually get the trucks to respond. There's no equipment rotation. You sure as hell aren't buying anything new.
yeah,
There's no way. So, yeah, it was pretty incredible to kind of stumble into another completely unrelated county to us, completely different area, and the one thing that finally paid off was the politics invested into the time invested into the politics, which generated cash flow.
yeah,
And I'd say that that's probably at the end of the day the biggest difference between the departments that are actually doing good. Uh, not that their work's not good, but they're in a healthy spot, kind of
yeah,
excited about what's on the horizon versus acting like a mouse in a cat factory.
yeah. Just surviving, right? There's a difference between surviving and thriving
Right.
every day of the week. And it's a different. that story's different everywhere, but it goes back to some key principles like you've got to have a funding source. There's got to be a way to basically keep the thing going and what oh that was loud. What people miss a lot is that they think that it's just you just do it. You just the government writes a check and it just happens.
Right.
And it's not always that simple, right? Uh there's a lot of difference between a county of, you know, 100,000 people and a county of 3 million people in tax base.
Right.
Uh, there's definitely a difference between a county of 10,000 people in tax base, and the farther rural you get, the more undeveloped ag land there is that ag land doesn't produce tax revenue.
Right. Yeah, it's I'll tell you, it's a major, major, major thing. And the way that I would physically address that problem is not the same as another, chief with more experience in that real rural setting. But I will say this, that the fact of the matter is that money makes this world go round, particularly our world. And the things that we have to buy for the organization to be able to function are not cheap. Even if you're trying to buy cheap brands and off brands and on and on. Just the base operating costs between utilities, payments, and gas and insurance. These things have all gone up exponentially in price. And I just, it's easy for me to sit here and it sounds like I'm telling you to just go get money, but that's what you have to go do. I mean, that's part of the job, particularly as chief or assistant chief, or if you're sitting on a board. And there's, I'll say this, that not one person can be responsible for all of that. And if you happen to be listening to this and not be a chief officer, uh, this is one of those things where you can talk to the chief and see how you can help them and make a colossal difference for your organization. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily going and getting fundraisers, does it, Jesse?
No, no, that fundraising is probably one of the hardest ways to get there, right? It's
Right.
it's it's the oh, especially if you're in a lower socio-economic area
Yeah,
or under
demographic, yeah.
yeah, that's probably one of the harder ways to get large sums of cash. The faster, easier ways are going to be grants and
Which are tailored to people that are in those socioeconomic depressed areas.
right,
I mean, you're going to shoot to the top of the list if you're like in this modern day, even in Texas, let's say 5 or 10 people on the department, you have less than $25,000 to operate on, and your call volumes, I don't know, we'll say 75 plus calls a year. Like, you're literally going to go to the top of that list, especially when you start listing the age of your tools and equipment and apparatus.
yeah, and I think that a lot of people misunderstand how grants work, and we talked about this with Carrie, but the somebody that's giving you money for philanthropic reasons like that, generally there's not a whole lot of strings attached, right?
Right.
Some of the federal stuff and state stuff, there are some strings attached, but the strings that are attached are generally there to keep keep them from making a mistake twice and giving somebody money for something that they didn't deserve
Right.
or didn't utilize or it was wasted.
Well, here's the other side of this coin, too. Don't overthink this. Who's better at writing grants? The city of Houston Fire Department or the city of Granbury's Volunteer Fire Department?
Yeah.
Yeah, the city of Houston. because they have the people, they have the ability to hire everyone, they have the staff to be able to research, and on and on. So the city of Houston's pulling down tens of millions of dollars a year in grants. Meanwhile, our little volunteer fire department's eligible for the exact same stuff, but we just don't put as much time, energy, and effort as we possibly could into it.
Yeah.
And I
And,
can guarantee
and
you that,
we're definitely on the end of the worst participants in the grant world because we just frankly don't give it any time, energy, and effort like what other organizations do.
right. Well, that, and I mean, it really does come down to a time thing. Um,
Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day.
Grants take a lot of time to do
Yeah,
them right,
yeah,
and they're not easy to write. And yeah, the struggle is real there. But I'm going to sound like an elitist jerk here. I'm not the beggar who's choosing either.
yeah.
And if you are, you don't have much money in your organization. I can tell you this, it's not necessarily your local municipality or county that's going to be able to be your savior.
And that's something that so what it takes to be an extremely well-funded volunteer fire department versus what it takes to be a very well-funded career department are two insanely different numbers.
Right. And I mean, we're talking about encyclopedia type volumes of segments of breakdown because I mean, you've got everything from different states, just everything.
Yeah,
It's there's no cookie cutter way to do this.
yeah. The labor component of that is exponential in
Right.
cost. And we've talked before about how we catch some grief over being volunteer and this whatever. It's just it's a math problem, right? What is your community going to give up to do that? And is it going to be roads or sewer or water or what are
Yeah.
they going to give up to?
Schools,
Yeah,
hospital district,
parks.
parks, police, SO. I mean,
You know, there's X number of dollars, and living within your means as a community is important. And I think that gets shuffled off sometimes, and that everybody just thinks it's a unlike the federal government who can just print more money when they want it. Local governments can't do that.
I'm going to give Jesse something here to read real quick, so I'm going to yammer away. Um, yeah, I mean, and that's the kicker I want to kind of highlight here because that real small department I was talking about, that chief to his credit, I mean, the joke I always make when I talk about being volunteer and being a volunteer chief is the difference between commitment and involvement is like a ham and eggs breakfast. The pig was committed and the chicken was involved. I am committed to the propagation and continuation of my organization. And I found several counties away another little itty bitty fire department that happened to be volunteer. And they had such pride in their organization. And they were just fighting so hard for so long. And then they finally found just a little bit of success. And I mean, them guys had climbed K2. And they're up there doing the jig and planting the flag. And it's awesome to actually see other little organizations come out and find success in their own manner. And this also goes to like combination departments and even, smaller career departments. I mean, don't get me wrong, the struggle is real for certain career departments. And when 98% of your budget's going to salary, that's that's a bad spot to be in. I mean,
Yeah,
and
that affords you nothing for
your city council can't just magically change that. There's a reason that you're operating on a shoestring budget like that. Because the poor city's struggling. There's no money in the city. So I mean, it's a real problem out there.
And
And
and I think with the one, I think the taxes are kind of, I wouldn't say maxed out because it could always get worse. Like everybody could have higher taxes, but we're getting to the point where the tax burden on the citizens pretty dang high, right? It's more than what most people are comfortable paying. Nobody's saying, "Hey, I'd really like to pay some more taxes." But the on the flip side of that, the philo- philanthropic end of it, that's growing, but the economy is also kind of in a rough spot right now. So you're going to see more struggles as businesses go out of business. That reduces the tax roll, that reduces sales tax. That's all those things impact a city's or county's ability to fund services. And
right. Well, let's just look for this example. Let's use our county. Okay.
yeah,
Hood County. And I do mean this to the credit of all of our commissioners and judge. They have supported the VFDs for a long time. Okay. We started getting apparatus and capital purchases almost 25 years ago. And the most recent thing they've started adding in is a subsidy and a healthy subsidy. We're not talking about a type of subsidy that, well, do we pay the electric bill this year or do we buy some Gatorade? There's a good subsidy. And the problem now is that inflation's so
rampant.
rampant, and this is not a political statement, this is just a fact, and particularly on the fire equipment side, uh PPE's gone up in price 48% since 2020. So even if you have a healthy subsidy and it only goes up 2 or 3% every year, okay? When your PPE line item increases by 200%, that's a problem for you.
Yeah.
And the commissioners on flip side, they can't increase the subsidy that much. They may want to, but we have to also come back to the realm of reality where they have a lot of other responsibilities that they have to fund. Um, and the crux in this, just so everyone has some clarification, in Texas, there's no requirement for counties to provide fire protection. There's no legal requirement for that. It's
There's
not
no requirement for municipalities to provide fire protection.
correct.
The only thing they have to provide is law enforcement.
That's it. And in Texas, a hospital district and or access to a hospital system.
Yep.
That's it. Okay. So in Texas, being in a very fiscally conservative county, to have the absolute privilege and luxury of our local commissioners and judge to fund a subsidy to the departments and then also be showered and spoiled rotten by a city council that also very, very, very well funds our organization and has for a long time to their credit. And to sit there and just tell everyone, like, go get money, I mean, I get it. The struggle is real, but you just, you can't sit there and complain about it and not do anything about it. You've got to go out there and figure out something. And it's not that you're even going to get money that first year, the first 5 years, the first 20 years, but you got to put your nose to the grindstone and continually make your argument in case. And it'll happen. Just takes a while. The other part of this that I would add is the kind of the missing secret sauce in all this is don't forget your community as a whole. Make sure that your citizens are informed on your needs and your difficulties.
Yeah.
It's a big part of that pie that gets missing.
So you got an email just a minute ago.
I did.
Uh, Interesting. Just somebody reaching out to us. More specifically, reaching out to Matt, but talking about this stuff. Like it's one of the folks, one of you listening right now. These are the questions, and I just want to reiterate that you can reach out to us. We're reachable, and don't always have the answer, but we'll talk about it. we'll figure it out. We help you figure it out. Uh, great to hear from somebody, and great to see that there's interest in what we're talking about. So
Yeah, it's just again, it kind of goes back to this podcast and the origins of it. You're not alone. Like everyone out there is having difficulties with something. There's challenges everywhere. None of them are the same for all of us. But there's strength in numbers, there's power in community, and a lot of stuff out there is a reoccurring theme. And if you don't have an answer to it or don't know where to start, reach out. You don't have to talk to us, just reach out to your neighbor. Talk to them.
yeah,
You're going to find that they have the same problem too. Work on it together. Build those relationships.
yeah, and realize not everything works everywhere, right?
Right. That's a big part of that.
That is a big part of it. And you know, just bouncing back into talking about that email. This person's talking about they're seeing struggles in recruitment that we're not seeing, and we lay all that out here dang near every month. We talk about it some, right?
Hmm?
How we're doing it and what we're doing. We're not doing that. We're not boasting at you. We're trying to help you listen to understand that there's things you can do. There's ways to make this work. And what worked for us may not work for you, but sitting around and saying, "Oh shucks, it's terrible," is not the right answer.
No. And I mean, I'll even add a self centered slice in this. I keep hoping that someone will tell me all the answers so I don't have to try and stumble through the night and find it.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
And
Uh,
and the podcast is just a way to document and record what those successes and failures are, so that when we go back and we look at it 10 years down the road, there's a map there of what we did and how we did it, and helps lay it out, and hopefully other people benefit from it. It's not Trust me, this is not for the Matt and Jesse benefit show. This
no.
this is for hopefully the benefit of others. How do a couple poor schmucks that have had a little bit of success in volunteer fire service give back to the volunteer fire service? You tell people where you had those successes and failures, and
Yeah.
and try to breathe some life into somebody else's organization that needs it.
Yeah. Well, and particularly if we can take a 10-year process and make it 18 months, because you don't have to make the mistakes that we made.
Yeah,
You don't have to go through the trial and error period that we did. You don't have to blindly go through the night and trip over something
yeah.
and just be like, oh, well, hell, there's three things we haven't tried. Let's try that.
And I'm gonna bounce back into a previous episode. We had I think it was the last one actually. Last episode we talked about the struggle of too many people and all that. And oddly enough, we weren't the only people in our circle of departments that was seeing this problem, and everybody kind of agreed, "Hey, we need to take control of this now before it becomes a real problem, and come up with a solution."
There's
Oh, there.
always an
Yep,
emergency.
Gene's talking to us from beyond. But the uh the thing is you get out and you talk about these things and figure out solutions. And oddly enough, other people are seeing these problems that you're seeing, and they also want solutions, and they're sometimes just scared to be the one that brings it up in fear that they're the only ones having this problem. And no, everybody's having these same problems. They're just spread out in different places.
Yeah, and they all present a little bit different.
Right.
I mean, if and we're not going to do this now, but realistically, I think all the problems that VFDs and combination departments face could probably be whittled down to seven, maybe 10 general big bold items,
Yep.
issues. And you'd be surprised how many of those can actually be lumped into one bubble.
Of training.
And it turns out that it really just boils down to You can find your solution in politics, communication, and training.
Yep. Yep.
And that's kind of the general, that's almost like a decent article to worth writing.
Yep.
That in itself right there is that you're over analyzing the actual problem.
Yep.
And that it comes down to these three things. If it's remotely department oriented, fix it through training. If it's a problem outside of the department, fix it through communication. And if it's a problem that's fiscally responsible, it's politics.
That's an epiphany, right?
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
really is. I may write that up and toss that on NVSC.
There you go. Well, Matt, you got anything else today?
No, let's keep it a little bit on the shorter
I
side
think
on this
short and
one.
sweet, and definitely keep reaching out. We enjoy it, and like Matt said at the beginning, we had somebody reach out earlier in the week, and literally had somebody reach out while we sat down to record this. So we hear you, and if you reach out, you'll know we respond because we respond to all of them. So except for that one guy, there's that one guy
There's always one guy.
that wants to sell us something, and that prince in
Nigeria.
Nigeria. Yeah, that we don't respond to that guy, but
Yeah, he won't leave me alone. All right, guys, I appreciate it. This is Matt.
this is Jesse.
And don't forget, you can always shoot us those questions at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. Have a good evening.
Good day.